for the last 4 years, New Orleans has been that team for as much talent as they had, just made some critical errors and gotten unlucky. They made a couple of playoff runs in recent years, but they've been the most unfortunate recipients of notable playoff moments. Remember the Minneapolis Miracle in 2017 with Case Keenum and Stephon Diggs. Remember the 2018 NFC title game with Bradley Roby Coleman Harris, whatever his name was. Getting that no call against I think it was Michael Thomas in the NFC Championship game. Yeah, the notable moments that Saints fans are always on the wrong end on. They also came up short against the Minnesota Vikings and the Tampa Bay Bucs in 2019 and 2020, respectively. But, at the same time, you can put them on the back burner on the wrong end of playoff moments. But, blame can also be placed on the duo of Drew Brees and Sean Payton, with them not doing enough, not making enough plays, not making enough calls for them to advance further and go back to the Super Bowl for the first time since their 2010 or the 2009 Super Bowl run. So going into this offseason, it was presenting a lot of change for the Big Easy, at least a beginning of change for New Orleans. Drew Brees retires after 20 years, first playing San Diego, then coming to New Orleans in a time where New Orleans really needed it in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. And then, aside from questions about the quarterback position, they had a very solid roster. They still had a strong offensive line. You had a top back in Alvin Kamara, as well as a defense that possessed Cameron Jordan, Marcus Davenport at the defensive line, and a secondary led by C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Marshawn Lattimore, and Malcolm Jenkins. But again, questions about the actual quarterback position. It was a battle between Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill, pretty much all offseason long that went into the preseason, and Jameis Winston ended up winning that battle. And, the Saints were also well over the cap. They had absolutely no money to spend. They were over $100 million over the cap. So they couldn't really spend anything in the offseason, and they only, if they did, they only had like short-term deals to hand out. And not only that, they didn't have a top option to go to, like in terms of Michael Thomas. He delayed his ankle surgery to last summer, and initially he was supposed to have a recovery time of 6 weeks, but then he ended up suffering a setback during the season, and he ended up missing the rest of the season. So going to 2021, they still had Sean Payton as their head coach, but still a lot of uncertainty facing New Orleans. So they actually started the season in a very unusual way. So pretty much the uncertainty beginning already for New Orleans. They were affected by Hurricane Ida. They had to go to play their first game of the season against the Green Bay Packers in the land of, where else? AEW, All Elite Wrestling. But unlike the Pack, who apparently bought into Tony Khan Man and the Cucka Sucks All Elite BS, Jameis Winston, Sean Payton were like, no. We don't buy into that carny spot orgy bullcrap. They whooped on Aaron Rodgers' candy ass and the Pack in one of the big early upsets of the season. Oh, at least at the time, which obviously motivated the Packers to go on a tear for the rest of the way. But either way, still regardless, it was at least it seemed like an early statement for the New Orleans Saints. And during that game, Jameis Winston, perhaps his best game of his career, 5 touchdowns, although with the least amount of yards. And he pretty much sliced and diced through an unprepared Packers defense, but couldn't replicate that success against a more solid Panthers defense the following week. And then going forward, the Saints would get a 50-50 Jameis experience against the likes of the Patriots, the Giants, the Seahawks, pretty much the better part of about 5 more weeks. The good thing is Jameis showed good intangibles, good ball placement, good care, nice range throws. The bad Jameis, though, was just like the one that Tampa Bay saw when he was starting there for the last 5 years. Taking too much time in the pocket, turnovers erratically, and would often get sacked if he had too much time with the ball. So throughout time, the strong defense that New Orleans had for the last couple of years, you can only hold up for so long, especially when the offense wasn't really doing anything. So when it came midseason, when it came to week 8 in a very important game for New Orleans against Tampa Bay, they got perhaps one of their biggest wins of the season, but it came at a price. It really came at a price. During that game, Jameis Winston tore his ACL on a horse collar tackle in the second quarter, and while Trevor Siemian, held on in relief, he was lost for the season. Jameis Winston was lost for the season, and it ended up having a big impact on the offense. Not only was that the beginning of the Saints' downfall for the season, but there was a lot more to it. Trevor Siemian sucked ass, completing slightly half of his passes each game he played. But sadly, he was the only option until Taysom Hill could come back from a serious concussion. And yeah, we all know what Ian Book looked like in that Monday night game eventually against the Miami Dolphins, even in backup duty. Like, my God. And the receiving cast, no help either because, Marcus Callaway, Draquan Smith either couldn't get open, couldn't catch the ball, or get sizable yards after the catch. Alvin Kamara would miss 4 games with the ankle injury, and half of the starting offensive line would also miss time. You also get injuries in the defense. And as I mentioned earlier, Michael Thomas suffered a setback that would lead to him missing the rest of the regular season. So by the time Sean Payton finally turned to Taysom Hill, they're pretty much do-all-everything quarterback. The Saints were 5-6. They were 5-6 going to December. And even with Taysom Hill in the lineup, they were still losing games. They were 5-7 when they last lost to the Dallas Cowboys, and in that game, Hill looked rattled. He looked reckless. He threw 4 interceptions in that primetime game, and they did win their last 3 of 4 heading into an all-important Week 18 game in Atlanta. But considering the teams that they played, aside from a big shutout victory over Tom Brady and the Bucs, the offense didn't score. The offense didn't score at all in that game. So they go into that Week 18 finale against Atlanta. Somehow, surprisingly, they're still in a position for the last playoff spot, but they needed the LA Rams to beat the 49ers at home. And Taysom Hill suffered a very bad injury in that game that could keep him out of 2022 as well. But Trevor Siemian did just enough to stunt the Falcons. But by the time the Saints won, you all know what happened from there. The Rams had already allowed overtime to the 49ers. And you all know what happened there. The 49ers beat the Rams to clinch their playoff berth and go on their magical Cinderella run. So the Saints lost out on the last playoff spot. And like I mentioned, Taysom Hill lost in that game to a serious injury. Again, could keep him out for next season. And New Orleans just extended him gave him a contract extension for whatever stupid reason. So for the Saints in 2021, despite all the snake-biting injuries, somehow stayed alive in the playoff race until literally the last hours of the regular season. But this season is going to be defined by a big what if. What if Jameis Winston never got hurt? What if he never suffered that ACL tear in week 8? I mean, I'm not saying that, Jameis Winston is going to be this big, crazy quarterback that's going to be comeback player of the year status. But he was at least playing pretty good. He looked generally better than he was in Tampa Bay. And he made better plays. He took better care of the football. So it leaves you wondering, would the Saints have made the playoffs had Jameis Winston was healthy instead of the likes of the Philadelphia Eagles or the 49ers? It's a big what if. And when you saw Jameis Winston go out of the lineup with that ACL tear, and despite having one of the better defenses in the NFL, that offense took a big nosedive, and especially when Alvin Kamara missed those 4 games. They significantly struggled. And it was already a struggle enough without Michael Thomas, but man, there was nobody to turn to in that offense. They also had kicker troubles throughout the season because their usual kicker, Will Lutz, was on season-ending IR before the season even began. So they went through a big shuffle, a really endless shuffle of Aldrick Rosas, Cody Parkey, and those are just the names, endless names. They finally settled on Brett Maher, a former kicker for the Dallas Cowboys, but they ended up bringing mixed results. And for the Saints, they hope they can get Will Lutz back in 2022. So overall, a bit of a surprise for the Saints to go 9-8 in spite of they lost Drew Brees to retirement in the offseason, and the offense production dipped, especially after Jameis Winston tore his ACL, was lost for the season, and then all the injuries and COVID-19 happened late in the season. So now they face an offseason full of complete uncertainty. They already faced the half uncertainty in the 2021 offseason. Now they face complete uncertainty this offseason because Sean Payton stepped down as head coach, and taking his place is defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. He has head coaching experience, but not very good one as the Oakland Raiders head coach in 2012 and 2014. And not only that, they still remain over the cap by a big margin. Now, they did restructure some contracts, but I don't know how they're going to financially make some wiggle room when free agency begins. And I don't know if they're going to be able to spend during free agency. So they have some things to figure out. They have to figure out who's going to be their answer at quarterback. Are they going to be able to re-sign Jameis Winston? They also have to figure out receiver and a bunch more. So the big question is it about to get messy in NOLA? So, like I said, going into the offseason, they have about, at the time of this, around minus 49 million. Yeah, that's the biggest of reds when it comes to cap space. Now, obviously, they may have lowered it by this point, because by this point, when free agency starts, all teams have to be under the cap. So they have to be free of any charges in layman's terms. Some of the key free agents include Jameis Winston, Teron Armstead, the tackle, Jordan Mills. So two key offensive linemen going to be free agents. Linebacker Quan Alexander and free safety Marcus Williams. They're currently slated to pick 18th in the draft, and they have some team needs to address. They obviously got to find a way to get under the cap, even when their new league year begins. So however they do that, restructures, extensions, find a way to do it. They also should re-sign Jameis Winston, or who knows, maybe they could go after someone like Deshaun Watson, depending on how the money plays out, what their draft picks look like. Who knows? What's in store for New Orleans? They can either go for a bridge option like Jameis Winston, or try to go put a package together for Deshaun Watson. But either way, they have to do something, and they also have to restructure Taysom Hill's stupid ass contract. 4 years, $40 million. That can go up to I think it's $80 million. Really? What the hell? And then last but not least, they have to address the wide receiver position. Now, Michael Thomas hasn't played a game since I think 2020. Is that correct? 2020, 2 years away from the game. Holy shit. So the Saints are really banking on Michael Thomas to get back to at least some form of his production from the last time he played. But even then, the Saints have to get some help, whether it's in the bargain bin free agency market or in the draft. So either way, they have to get some help behind or even in front of Michael Thomas, because Marcus Callaway and Traquan Smith aren't going to get it done for you in 2022. And I guess you can also try to re-sign Teron Armstead because you need to solidify that offensive line and get some more pieces around there too. So for New Orleans, they enjoy the good times like they do and how you do it in New Orleans, Louisiana, enjoying some Popeye's chicken, and letting the good times roll in the last decade with a Super Bowl win in 2010 and several playoff appearances in the late 2010s. But you got to consider the following. They lost both Drew Brees and Sean Payton in the span of 2 off seasons. They're well over the salary cap. And who knows if they're able to spend on nearly anything, including their key in-house free agents and adding at key positions. So for New Orleans, if they're not able to do anything in the offseason, if they're not able to address key free agents, if they don't nail the right picks in the draft, and let alone they can't even get Jameis Winston back, then damn, things are about to get big hard in the big easy. Actually, not so big easy for the New Orleans Saints in 2022, and perhaps even beyond that.